1. Background. This happened early 1990s, just after the Cold War was silently dropped. In my country, we had universal draft for any fit young man. The setup. I was stationed in a camp up north. Boredom reigned supreme. The camp had 2 gates, the main gate to the south at the end of a dead-end street, a few hundred meters from the main road, and a rear gate to the north. The officers' mess and bachelor officers' quarters were outside that gate. To go from the rear gate to the main gate outside the camp, one would have to go out to the main road, move south some 100 meters, and then up that dead-end street. The instructions for guard duty at the gates were really simple. If you personally know the person and know that the person in question is actively serving, if the person can show military ID, or if someone in the first 2 categories can vouch for them, you can let them in. Else you have to get in touch with the guard commander, usually located in the guardhouse just outside the main gate. No ID required to leave. Since the regular mess hall served something borderline edible at the good days, most officers would eat in the officers' mess. Since the Cold War was over, most on guard duty would not bother with the required ID checks. The malicious compliance. Service in the north is boring. Guard duty is also boring. My troop found that checking ID, especially at the rear gate, could be a little fun though. In the morning, quite a few would forget their wallet with their ID in their rooms, and have to run back to get it. No big deal, going back in to get the wallet was just 5 minutes, but a bit of a hassle when they were already running late. And the later they were running, the more probable it was they had forgotten their ID. The real deal was after lunch, since a lot would leave their ID in the office, and so not have any way to collect it without getting into the camp. So they would have to go around nearly a kilometer, and then go to the guard captain to get a note, so they could enter through the main gate. Easily at least 15 minutes extra on the less than 5-minute stroll back from lunch. Seems a lot of officers in our direct chain of command, so we had to know them, or that had their ID ready, found this fun as well, since getting a colleague to vouch for them seemed difficult. The ones declining would be smiling and laughing about it. We got a lot of attaboys for following protocol, even from officers who had denied access. 2. It's going to sound like it's fairly reasonable to start. Trust me, it gets silly real quick. I just started work at one of the big railway companies as a safety officer and customer service rep. Now, as you can imagine, that is basically herding sheep, and not very effectively. People have places to go, but I'd rather they didn't end up dead. During probation, one of the bosses got moved to my station. Now, this guy could not have fit the police description of up his boss's butt more if he tried. Looked like he spent the last 40 years dreaming of having a badge on with significance, and by God he was going to use it. On the platform of every station, there is a yellow line on the floor, a few feet from the edge, to signify where not to walk, lest the turbulence turns you into a train's doormat. Simple stuff, and when a train is pulling up, you're to keep everyone behind it. No issues so far, that's literally my job. Now, for weeks, he'd been a stickler for his way, but he would mask it as, "This came from head office." But on this particular day, whatever bee was in his bonnet came out in full force, and he was masking nothing. Once the train was stopped, so long as you don't have a full gaggle at the door, we usually have no issues with 1 or 2 people, you know, the London crowd who won't wait, being next to the door, ready. It's efficient, if nothing else. The train has stopped. 3 people were waiting for the doors to open. They did. The train left. This guy starts shouting from literally the other platform in front of other travelers, roasting the crap out of me. Safety, yes, but this was obscene. So he decided to enact a rule of his own. "If you want to pass this probation, I want to see everyone behind that yellow line for a full 30 seconds before you signal to let the doors open. If a single person moves, you talk to them about safety and wait again." So let me get this straight. That 30 seconds resets for every time someone else doesn't listen and crosses the line. Did I stutter? Did you what? Oh, you're on, sweet child. Across that day, I was honestly looking at my watch more than I was anything else. Remember, it's for your safety after all. Plot twist? Dual line station, one into the city, one on the way to London, no way past it. If a train is delayed, nothing else moves. Cue about 2 hours later, and sure enough, the dweeb manager comes charging down the platform. "What the hell are all these delays for? I've got head office tearing us a new one." Just making sure we adhere to the 30 seconds, boss. I've never had so much feedback about safety. Well, the feedback I'm getting is we now have a near 10-train bottleneck at this station. Firstly, it's you who have a bottleneck, not us. Secondly, I'm merely doing exactly as you asked. His face dropped, clearly understanding what had happened. Right then, well, you can talk to the area manager and explain this for yourself, because he's going to be here in about 15 minutes. He's coming here. Deal. Did he go white as a ghost? Yes. Did he try stopping me, seeing the area manager? Yes. Was he successful? Hell no. What ensued was maybe a 20-minute conversation between me and the area manager. Me finding out that this manager had been moved more than a few times for various issues. The meeting between them two lasted probably 90 seconds, if that. And then a very sheepish-looking manager slowly slinked up to me and in the lowest voice ever said, "You're doing a good job. I trust you to use your judgment with the onboarding process." And then immediately scuttled away. He's moved on since, but apparently it was a personal request this time. Can't think why. 3. My work in public services. It was a new role, and I am the first and only one of me. Essentially, this means that my job scope can be pretty broad, and I have a lot of fingers in a lot of different pies. I have also gained the reputation of a no-nonsense problem solver. Cannot for the life of me think why. So when people have issues, they tend to come to me. I was busily hashing out a few tasks last week when I get something else slapped on my plate. A manager of a service we commission with, appropriately named Karen, has apparently been working her way through people because she isn't getting the resolution she wants. So one of the managers in finance wants me to look into this for Karen. Now, a thing to note here is that every April we increase rates along with inflation, but she didn't get it. Thing is, it's out of our hands. The services we commission from her are funded between us and another separate public service, PS2. We pay half, PS2 pay half, but we haven't paid the increase because PS2 haven't agreed anything yet. What can I say? It's the public sector. Our team's conversation goes something like, "Hey, finance manager, I can't actually do anything about this because this is your job. It's your department that deals with these contracts, so deal with it. I don't care how. Just get her off my back." Now, that's mostly paraphrased, except for the fact that last sentence, which he said verbatim, "I don't care, just get her off my back." I write in chat to confirm I am to deal with this and you do not care how. Finance manager says, "Yes, for Christ's sake." I crack my knuckles and get to work, sending her the following email and CCing in finance manager and my own manager. "Dear Karen, I apologize for the delay in the inflationary increase for the service. However, as this is jointly funded between ourselves and PS2, we are beholden to their financial timelines. As PS2 have not yet agreed to the 4.1% increase, we are unable to process it. Regardless of how many individuals you contact, this will remain the case until PS2 see fit to approve. In instances such as these, our recourse should be to head down to the offices of PS2 and begin smacking naughty bottoms. But I fear HR would frown upon such action in these enlightened times. Might I suggest contacting PS2 yourself in order to expedite the process? I'm sure finance manager at my place of work, would be happy to direct you to the appropriate contact and answer any further questions. Warmest regards, my name. I then immediately got a Teams call from my manager where for 30 seconds all I could hear was laughing, and he asked me what was going on. I sent him the screenshots of the chat messages between myself and finance manager and relayed the Teams call. My manager told me that it was not, in fact, my job. How odd. And later that day, finance manager apologized. In the future, you should probably hold back on the bollock-withering sarcasm. People might not find it amusing. I think I'm hysterical, personally. 4. This was a couple of months ago, back in May. I had been living in an apartment with 3 other roommates, so 4 of us total, for about 8 months. We are all women in our 20s. I barely interacted with my other roommates at all. Just between our jobs and classes, we never saw each other. We all had our own rooms as well. For some context, on May the 5th, my fiancé and I were planning to move into a new apartment together. So by the evening of the 4th, I had just about all of my belongings packed up. More on that later. Though I barely interacted with my roommates, I felt like we coexisted well, and we never fought or argued about anything. Except for some very minor instances with Vicky and Kara. Those 2 were friends, and Vicky was definitely the messiest of the 4 of us living there. She would leave her clothes in the dryer for days, pile dishes in the sink for more than a week before cleaning them, and often forget food in the fridge until it would rot. Maybe 5 times throughout my time living there, I would get a text in our group chat from Kara saying something like, "Hey LP, I talked to the others and they said the dishes in the sink aren't there, so please clean them." This was annoying, but it happened infrequently enough it wasn't awful. And I figured Vicky lied to Kara about the messes, since it was just easier to throw me under the bus than to own up to it herself. On the evening of May 4th, so the night before I was planning to move out, Kara sent a very long and scathing text to our group chat. She went on and on about how she is tired of my messes, hates all my stuff strewn about the apartment, and also personally attacked me, calling me disgusting and inconsiderate. Since I was leaving literally the next day, I didn't see any reason to start a fight, so I just said it was her lucky day and I was actually moving out the next morning. She replied, "Whatever you say, just take all your stuff and leave." Now the malicious compliance. As I had mentioned earlier, I had packed most of my belongings already, but technically not everything. The 4 of us all moved into the apartment at about the same date, but I moved in a few days earlier than the others. This means I had bought a lot of the communal items myself. I was planning to leave these out of kindness, despite them being worth about $400. However, once I got that text from Kara, I decided I would in fact take all of my stuff and leave. These communal items included all trash cans in the whole apartment, $100, the Wi-Fi router, $150, a large metal shelving rack, probably the one that hurt the most, $150. The shelving rack was likely the most devastating loss for them since they had tons of stuff. For reference, the kitchen had 10 cupboards and 8 drawers, of which I used 2 cupboards and 1 drawer to store my items. The cupboards I used were also the ones above the microwave and the fridge, since I'm the tallest and wanted to be considerate. All the rest of the cupboards, drawers, and the entire metal rack, which had 5 large shelves, were filled to the brim with my roommate's stuff. Essentially, there was absolutely no way they'd be able to fit it into the amount of space I left behind without buying another rack or putting it on the counter and floor. I was careful to keep all their stuff from the rack organized and neat when I moved it, and everything from the rack completely covered the counters, kitchen table, and coffee table in the living room. I moved out peacefully with all my belongings the next day, and have been happily in my new apartment with my fiancé. A few days after moving out, Vicky texted in the group chat that, "FYI, the Wi-Fi isn't working anymore." I wonder why. And at that point, I left the chat. I've wondered how long it took Kara to realize that it actually was never me that was making messes in the apartment. But I guess I'll never know. 5. The HR manager where I currently work is a superficial, controlling, self-important snob who only pretends to give a rat's butt about employee satisfaction. And even then, only when it makes her look good. She once attempted to introduce me to a new staff member and didn't know my name, and I'd already been working there for 4 years. She'd been there for 5. And I recall even wearing my name badge at the time, so she didn't even think to pretend she knew my name, to at least try to save face with me. She once tried to revive the long-dead workplace social vibe and distributed an email to our office, informing them of a morning tea for a staff birthday. But then we all had to register by COB if we planned on attending. And she was actually chasing up people who hadn't responded, like there was no organized external catering or anything that she needed numbers for. Heaven forbid she spend too much of her department's budget on boosting staff morale. It was literally a 12-piece store-bought cake and a cheese platter in the staff kitchen on a Thursday afternoon. Not to mention, the staff member whose birthday it was notorious for not wanting to celebrate his birthday, which she would have known if she'd bothered to care. And the coffee machine. One day it wasn't working, and this HR manager comes into my area in a flurry, saying it wasn't working, and that she's got better things to do than to try and fix it herself. She was clearly posturing in a way that implied she expected me to do something about it, without her having to ask, me being a lowly admin officer, which to her I guess was the equivalent of coffee bitch. I slowly get up, not in any particular hurry. I give it a look over, whatever compartments will open, taking my time, and she's getting more flustered by the second. I kind of waffle on about what could be wrong with it, not really doing anything to fix it, or act as if this was the emergency she was making it out to be. I eventually made my escape after someone else came in and let her make a fuss to them. Sorry, Graham. If it had been anyone else, because anyone else would have asked politely, I would have absolutely stepped up and done my best to assist. And probably would have fixed it too, as I do happen to know most of the quirks of that particular coffee machine. One day I learned that this woman, unsurprisingly, doesn't even trust her own staff. In HR. Like, you are hiring your own people, are you not? Like, why would you not hire people you can trust? Anyway, with this information, I made it a point from then on to send any HR correspondence to the generic HR email, instead of her personal manager's one, with the reasoning being that people often go on leave and it's important that no HR correspondence falls through the cracks. If it gets sent to an individual who isn't in the office for whatever reason, any hard copy things get placed on a certain table in the HR office for whoever is there to attend to it. If something is marked confidential, I will of course leave it in the envelope, but unless it has a particular person's name in the address field, it's going on the center table. I'm the admin officer, from the mailroom. I deal with tons of incoming correspondence every day, electronic and paper. I just love thinking of this woman squirming every time an email comes in or something is left on the table, and trying to micromanage her team so they don't come across anything they shouldn't. Might as well give her something else to make a fuss about besides the coffee machine. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 364. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. And if you'd like early access to these videos, then you can get that on a Monday, all at once by supporting me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. You'll also find in the description a link to the Hellfreezer Discord server, as well as the Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring. And if you really enjoyed today's video, you can leave a tip for that by clicking on the heart with the $sign underneath the video, and selecting the tip of your choice. That is not and is never required, although I do appreciate it, because who doesn't appreciate it when people give them money? Okay. I don't think we have any other bits of business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, and this one comes from Gemwolf via the Discord, what's that one personal project you can't let go? Okay, I think for me, it's the notion of getting my front and back gardens into usable shape again. I like the idea of being able to kind of grow fruit and veg, and I have made no steps to do it. I do need to cut the back grass, so it needs its first cut this year, and I've not had time to get around to it. But I imagine it's something that'd be nice to do when I'm older and married and retired. Just, spending a little time in the garden. Maybe I'll come in and I'll do a few occasional videos here and there, but I'm retired, so I don't need to do them every day. And then I go out and I check on the tomatoes and whatever else I can get to grow in this country. Maybe some exotic fruits. I know there were some kind of unusual colored tomatoes. Anyway, I could go on, but that's mine, so why don't you let me know what some of yours are in a comment below. Before we go, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And today's answer comes from Revenge's Ice Cream 361. And this was about, do your dreams take place in places you've been, or I think in fantasy locales? And today's answer comes from S. Nixon. My dreams can be so strange, like the one last night. It seems like it could be 50-50. I've remembered some dreams I've had where the dream is in a place I don't recognize. Sometimes where I live now, or where I used to live nearly 20 years ago. I always find it so weird that I have dreams that take place in a house I lived in years ago. I mean, me and my family only lived there for 12 years. Dreams can be weird. Thank you very much for your answer, S. Nixon. And with that, I'm gonna head off for now and record more videos. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.